Something is shaking the entire hip-hop world right now, and it is not just another beef, not another diss track, not another publicity stunt. It is deeper. It is darker. It is the kind of betrayal that burns everything it touches. Because one of hip-hop's most respected icons has allegedly turned against one of his own. And the whispers coming out of federal corridors? They sound like the end of an empire. Sources close to the ongoing federal investigation into Sean Diddy Combs claim that Snoop Dogg, yes, that Snoop, is no longer standing on the sidelines. He is not watching the storm, he might be the storm. Insiders say he has stepped forward, not as a friend, not as a rival, but as a cooperating insider. A man who has lived through the glitter, the gossip, and the guilt, and who now seems ready to tell everything he has seen behind those velvet ropes. This is not just about Diddy's 50-month sentence for his so-called transportation crimes. No, this is about a machine. A hidden system that has quietly controlled Hollywood parties, shaped careers, silenced victims, and built a kingdom on fear and secrecy. By the time Diddy was relocated to FCI Fort Dix, New Jersey, in late 2025, the headlines had already mutated into something far more terrifying. The world saw the words coercion, control, and exploitation written in cold legal ink. But then, something happened that froze the internet. A sealed affidavit was leaked. And in those pages, buried between federal jargon and redacted names, there was one name that made the entire music industry stop breathing: Snoop Dogg. For years, he laughed off rumors about the Hamptons' white parties. People joked. Memes were made. The internet moved on. But not anymore. Because according to multiple insiders, Snoop has allegedly handed over lists of attendees, financial records, and even footage that could connect some of the most powerful names in music, politics, and media, directly to the dark heart of Diddy's empire. And the scariest part? Those names are not just celebrities. They are people who built this industry. People who can make or break careers with one phone call. Social media exploded. Fans are torn between disbelief and shock. Some call it betrayal, others call it justice. But one thing is certain, the walls are closing in. Because if these leaks are even half true, this is not the end of Diddy's downfall. This might be the beginning of hip-hop's biggest reckoning. To truly grasp the magnitude of this betrayal, we need to rewind the clock, way back to the early 1990s, when hip-hop was more than music, it was war. The East Coast versus West Coast feud was not just about lyrics, it was about power, blood, and pride. On one side, Diddy and his Bad Boy Records, ruling New York's skyline. On the other, Suge Knight and Snoop Dogg, carrying the raw heat of death row records straight from Compton's streets. What started as music turned into something far deadlier, a cultural civil war that defined an entire generation. But time has a strange way of blurring the lines between enemies and allies. By the mid-2000s, the world watched in disbelief as Snoop Dogg began showing up at Diddy's legendary white parties, those glimmering, all-white, champagne-drenched events in the Hamptons where celebrities like Paris Hilton, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jay-Z, and even political families brushed shoulders under chandeliers of power. What the world saw looked innocent: peace, unity, and forgiveness wrapped in designer suits. But according to people who were there, those nights were not reunions, they were recruitments. Former assistants have since confessed that those parties carried a hidden purpose. Behind the smiles and flashbulbs, corridors were lined with security guards collecting phones, doors were locked, and silence was currency. Staff members were told to see nothing, say nothing. And what was sold to the public as a symbol of reconciliation was, allegedly, a pipeline into Diddy's inner world of control and exploitation. Then came the lawsuit that broke the illusion. Cassie Ventura, in 2023, shattered years of silence, accusing Diddy of manipulation, coercion, and forced participation in what prosecutors chillingly labeled freak-offs. That word, ugly, strange, unforgettable, became the key to unlocking the hidden nightmare behind Diddy's empire. When CNN later released surveillance footage from 2016, showing Diddy attacking Cassie in a Los Angeles hotel hallway, the internet stopped. The world saw it, and so did Snoop. Insiders claim that footage haunted him for years. It was not just Cassie's pain, it was the pattern. The same darkness he had witnessed at those so-called exclusive events. For almost a decade, he stayed quiet, trapped between fear and survival. But one event burned away the silence. December 2011, Kid Cudi's car exploded in his own driveway shortly after rumors of him dating Cassie surfaced. At first, everyone dismissed it as coincidence, until Cudi himself confirmed years later that it had been a message. That moment changed everything. Investigators now see it as a thread, part of a network of intimidation designed to keep people in line. That intimidation reportedly stretched beyond artists, it reached stylists, assistants, executives, and anyone who ever dared to step too close to the truth. And while Diddy's empire grew, Snoop stayed publicly neutral, smiling for the cameras, until whispers began in 2022. Sources now claim federal agents approached him during negotiations over the Death Row Records acquisition. They believed he knew not just what was happening, but how it was structured. According to internal briefings, the investigators were not chasing a typical criminal ring. They were dismantling a corporate ecosystem of silence, assistants managing travel, staff coordinating deliveries, executives laundering reputations through charity events. It was not chaos, it was organized obedience. The turning point came in 2024, when Christina Kurum, Diddy's former chief of staff, took the stand. Her testimony dropped like a bomb. She described a pink-tinted powder distributed at private gatherings, a substance meant to relax guests into compliance. She said she was ordered to procure it personally, not just for Diddy, but for visiting celebrities and industry power players. Suddenly, laughter turned into panic. This was no longer rumor. It was logistics. When investigators traced the receipts, the event lists, and the payments, something chilling surfaced. Snoop Dogg's name appeared repeatedly on guest manifests connected to now active federal reviews. And that, insiders say, was the moment the deal was struck, through attorneys, through quiet meetings, through promises of leniency on unrelated financial probes. But what Snoop provided was not just attendance logs. He allegedly delivered access, contracts, footage, the infrastructure that made those parties untouchable. It painted a disturbing picture. This was not just luxury entertainment, it was a controlled ecosystem. A world where guests were carefully tested, recorded, and, in some cases, compromised. We cannot confirm the list of names in the affidavit, but one thing is becoming horrifyingly clear: this network goes far beyond Diddy. It snakes through record labels, streaming giants, and executives who all had something to lose if the truth ever surfaced. And now, thanks to one of hip-hop's most iconic figures, that truth is finally crawling into the light. The implications of this are not just shocking, they are career-ending. The names surfacing in testimony are the same names that built modern hip-hop, pop culture, and even fashion itself. And now, their carefully polished images are cracking. One of the most disturbing moments came when Usher, long portrayed as Diddy's protégé, was mentioned in sworn testimony describing a public assault on Cassie Ventura in a 2010 restaurant. The witness, Dawn Richard, told jurors she saw Diddy strike Cassie, in front of everyone, while celebrities, including Usher, sat frozen in disbelief. No one intervened, she said. The room went silent as those words echoed. How many people saw, and did nothing? Meanwhile, Young Miami, who dated Diddy between 2021 and 2023, is facing new questions about her connection to his empire. She has publicly denied any knowledge of wrongdoing, but internal lawsuits allege that her cousin was directly involved in procuring the so-called party supplies. The line between partner and participant has blurred beyond recognition. As Diddy's empire expanded, loyalty became currency, and silence became survival. Then came the ghost from the past, the 2000 VMA after-party incident, long buried, long forgotten. An unnamed minor had accused Diddy and another male celebrity, later identified by investigators as Jay-Z, of assault. The case was dropped in silence. No headlines. No justice. But now, attorneys are reopening old files, asking if the same handlers and security teams tied to the white parties were part of something much bigger, a decades-long system of protection. For years, these stories existed like scattered puzzle pieces, whispers on forums, blind items on gossip blogs. But when Snoop Dogg's name appeared in federal filings, everything connected. Suddenly, those isolated tales formed a pattern. And behind every incident was the same haunting question: how did so many powerful people witness the same horrors and still pretend they saw nothing? Former assistants paint an eerie picture: candlelit hallways filled with laughter, trays of sparkling drinks mixed with unlabeled powders, celebrities smiling for photos while darkness unfolded just out of frame. Those glossy party photos? They are not just nostalgia anymore, they are evidence. According to multiple witnesses, the infamous freak-offs were not spontaneous indulgences, they were productions. Planned, filmed, catalogued. Every angle recorded. Every guest tracked. And those archives, once guarded behind encrypted servers, are now in federal hands. The ripple effect has already begun. Insiders say Snoop's cooperation has split the industry in half. Some call him a traitor, others call him a survivor. Even Suge Knight, speaking from prison earlier this year, accused Snoop of destroying Death Row's legacy. But what Suge did not know was that Snoop had already been meeting with federal investigators by then. Quietly, carefully, choosing between loyalty and survival. Those close to him describe sleepless months of negotiations, lawyers whispering through the night, and a single haunting truth: the man America loved for his charm and humor might now be holding the keys to dismantle an empire. The same charisma that made him the industry's cool uncle could now dismantle the very system that crowned him. And the government? They are not stopping with Diddy. Leaked fragments from the sealed affidavit mention bad boy entertainment executives, event planners, and hotel chains working together in what investigators describe as a logistical network, a machine of drivers, suppliers, and couriers operating across Los Angeles, Miami, and Ibiza. What looks like a party empire on the surface might actually be a corporate RICO web. If this is true, Diddy's conviction is not the finale. It is the opening act of something much darker. Because Snoop's cooperation did not end one man's career, it might have triggered the largest takedown in entertainment history. And now, the dominoes are falling. Social media is exploding with speculation. Old photos, old videos, suddenly re-examined frame by frame. Fans are asking, who else was there? Who else knew? Who stayed quiet? Usher's silence during Cassie's assault is under renewed investigation. Young Miami's name now appears in separate civil suits involving illicit distributions. Jay-Z's 2000 case, once erased from the media, is resurfacing in victims' advocacy circles. Each new revelation draws a darker circle, connecting one glittering event to another, the same mansions, the same faces, the same music blasting over the same silence. For the first time, Hollywood does not know who to defend. The aura of invincibility is gone. Because this is no longer about gossip. It is about an industry-wide reckoning. Snoop Dogg did not just decide to talk. He prepared for this. For years. And prosecutors, according to sources close to the case, never wanted just one man, they wanted the entire ecosystem that protected him. The question is no longer if Diddy's empire will fall, but how many others will collapse with it. Because now, investigators have widened their net, not just under criminal charges, but under RICO law. And for those unfamiliar, RICO is not about catching the guilty, it is about dismantling every single person who helped them stay powerful. That means the party planners, the assistants, the suppliers, the ones who cleaned up the messes and deleted the footage. No one is safe. And when those indictments drop, and they will, the only question left will be, who's next? We are no longer watching the downfall of one man. We are watching the collapse of an entire system that allowed him to rise. Because now, the FBI's task force is no longer asking who knew, they are asking who profited. And those two words alone have turned the entire industry into a crime scene. The shockwaves are already visible. Usher, once celebrated as Diddy's protege, is now facing questions no one thought would ever reach him. Not because he participated, but because he stayed silent. According to testimony, he watched Diddy strike Cassie Ventura in a crowded restaurant back in 2010. He did nothing. 14 years later, even after the 2016 hotel footage surfaced, he still said nothing. And now legal analysts say, that silence may not save him. Under federal aiding and abetting clauses, simply standing by could be enough to draw scrutiny. For the first time ever, the people who stood in the same room may face the same legal fire as the ones who orchestrated the crimes. Then comes Young Miami, a name the public once attached to luxury, love, and lifestyle. But inside court documents and whispered testimonies, her story reads very differently. She has not been charged, yet, but plaintiffs describe a young female artist, close to Diddy who allegedly arranged deliveries for private gatherings. And insiders say those deliveries were not champagne or flowers. They were chemical obedience. Substances designed to keep guests compliant, smiling, numb, and silent. The accusations are brutal. And if even fragments are true, she could shift from companion to key witness. She insists she was not there. But the timestamps on those lawsuits tell another story. And then, the ghost from 2000 returns. The VMA after-party, that buried case no one was supposed to remember. The one where a minor accused Diddy and another celebrity, later identified as Jay-Z, of assault. It vanished quietly back then, swallowed by influence and money. But now it has crawled back out of the archives. Attorneys are pushing to reopen it under the RICO expansion, meaning, if the same system of handlers, planners, and protectors is proven, that old case becomes part of a federal criminal web. This is no longer isolated scandal. It is infrastructure. A former promoter said it best, these weren't accidents, they were logistics. Every event, every guest list, every security clearance, all part of a system designed to protect the few at the expense of everyone else. But the most fascinating, and terrifying, player in all this? Snoop Dogg. For decades, he was the calm in the chaos, the legend who survived everything, gang wars, label feuds, media witch hunts. He became the lovable face of hip-hop, cooking with Martha Stewart on weekdays, performing at the Super Bowl on weekends. He was untouchable. Or so it seemed. So why is he talking now? Sources say his cooperation with federal authorities is not just moral, it is strategic. A deal. A survival contract. Investigators reportedly offered him conditional immunity, protection in exchange for full cooperation and detailed testimony about Diddy's network. One insider described it bluntly: he is not just helping them. He is saving himself. But this is no ordinary plea deal. According to one highly placed industry contact, Snoop's immunity only stands if his testimony leads to at least 3 major convictions. Let that sink in. His safety depends on delivering names, real names, before the clock runs out. That single detail has turned the industry into a battlefield of paranoia. Executives, artists, stylists. Everyone is lawyering up. No one knows who has already been named. The silence online is deafening, not because people are calm, but because they are terrified. Behind the headlines, the legal math is devastating. Diddy's 2025 conviction, for transporting individuals for illicit purposes, was only a fragment of the puzzle. Over 100 lawsuits remain active. Each one introduces new witnesses. Each witness adds new names. Each name connects another piece of the empire. The courtroom is no longer just a stage for justice. It has become the operating table where the illusion of glamour is being dissected, piece by piece, revealing an anatomy of greed, manipulation, and silence. And through it all, one truth remains: this all began with a single voice, Cassie Ventura. She did not just open the door. She kicked it down. What the world thought was a breakup story was actually the start of a revolution. As the months pass, the investigation keeps expanding. The federal team is not chasing one man anymore, they are mapping an ecosystem. They do not need everyone to be guilty, they just need proof that each person helped the machinery move. Drivers, assistants, promoters, accountants, artists, no one is outside the frame. And that is why Snoop's cooperation has become nuclear. He is not just a witness, he is the translator. The one who speaks both languages, the street code and the corporate code. As one insider whispered, he's giving them the map. Not just names. Not just receipts. The blueprint of how it all worked. Who handled the footage? Who managed the cleanups? Who moved the money offshore? Who was paid to keep quiet? And that silence? It was worth millions. Maybe billions. The feds have waited years for someone like him, someone who could expose the bridge between the underground and the boardroom. Because that is where the real power hides, not in the music, but in the money. Not in the fame, but in the contracts, the shell companies, the private jets, and the offshore accounts. This is no longer a scandal. It is a dismantling. And the countdown has already begun. Every new revelation pulls the curtain back just a little further, and what's behind it is uglier than anyone ever imagined. The old guard is shaking. The newer generation, the ones who grew up idolizing these men, are caught in emotional whiplash, torn between loyalty and disbelief. The same faces they once printed on posters are now plastered across indictment rumors and court documents. The internet has become its own courtroom, dissecting, replaying, rewinding. Every photo is potential evidence. Every lyric suddenly sounds like a